This is Hugh Ballou. Welcome to this session. My special guest today is my dear friend Cal Turner. Known Cal Turner, probably about 10 years. And every time I talk with Cal, I should say the bottom line, he makes me think because he has some profound statements. Cal Turner was president and CEO of Dollar General and took it public. And Cal has very astute observations about leadership. Cal, welcome to this interview today. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Hugh. Being here is wonderful.
The topic is sustainability and creating legacy. And before we get there, talk about your leadership in Dollar General. And you told me a little story about you going to your managers and saying you got it because you were the son of the founder, and you asked them to play into the space. And then your foundation. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you approach leadership, if you will.
Well, thank you, Hugh. Leadership, I believe, may start with the leader establishing himself with his supposed followers. And I wanted them to know that I intended to share the leadership agenda with them. Mm-hmm. And I tried to make me real as a person with them by poking fun at myself. I'm here because I'm the boss's son. And that's not good, is it? You know, boss spelled backwards is double S-O-B.
That's right.
No one cares for the boss. Now, what about the boss's son? That must be worse. So clearly, if we all are to succeed, I need your help. You understand this business enterprise. You experience all of the problems and opportunities faced by this business enterprise and have creativity that we need to tap in how to move forward, how we can all move forward together. Mm-hmm. I need your help. And by the way, you have my commitment that success will be shared. If you'll really come on board and be part of this, success will be shared. That's pretty much it. Was that a poignant or pregnant pause?
I was reflecting on that. The summary you had given me when you first shared that was that leadership is about defining one's gaps and finding competent people to fill those gaps. And you also went on to tell me that you were very transparent. And if you hadn't been, it would have been a very different and negative dynamic. And so,
yes. Well, it indeed is about defining the gaps and establishing partnerships to do something about them. And I needed first to establish a strategic inquiry in our company. I needed everyone to be interested in exploring together our gaps. Now, first, I thought I had to admit my gaps. Mm-hmm. And I did that by this boss's son discussion I would have for their hearing. I'm here because I'm the boss's son. I've tried to do most of the jobs in this company that all of you do and have discovered that I'm good at none of them. But that gives me a sense of awe in my respect for your ability to do them. Not only do I respect your ability to do them, I respect your discernment about what the problems are, how they happen in the first place, and the ability of all of us to come together to fix problems for the benefit of all of us. And I'd like for us to go at that. We have to be honest first.
Mm-hmm.
And we as a company need not to tell the boss what the boss wants to hear. The boss, if he is a leader or she, really wants your iteration of the truth. What is the truth as you see it? And I hope for us to have relationships where you feel free to disclose that. You're not playing the political game of trying to figure out the boss so you know what to tell the boss that will be what he wants or she wants.
You and I were talking as we were preparing for this interview about the writing of Richard Rohr, R-O-H-R. And Richard has been talking recently about the true self and false self. And what you just described is in essence what that is. The true self is, as Paul says in the Bible, speak the truth in love. And what you modeled is what is reflected in the culture. And as you remember, I spent 40 years as a musical conductor, and the orchestra choir very much models the conductor. And I write about that and transform that into corporate culture. And so you set the bar right there for that honesty that you, and as it's the way you acted, we can really say anything we want. If we don't respond with integrity, with authenticity, and model and practice what we preach, the culture is going to come back. And you said to me as a postscript to that, if I hadn't admitted and been transparent about my gaps, they would prove to me that I had those gaps and I wasn't being honest with them. So you nipped that in the bud by being direct right away.
Yes. And that was my modeling the dealing with truth that I was trying to do, that I hoped they would consider for themselves and their work and their lives.
Part of sustainability, we're talking about leaving a legacy, and part of sustainability, and you went on from that to the work you're now doing with the Turner Family Foundation. Is that the right name?
Yes, the Cal Turner Family Foundation.
Cal Turner Family Foundation. And so we're talking about legacy, but underpinning that is sustainability. How do we create something a model that's sustainable? And so speak to the leadership piece of that, if you will, please.
Well, I think the key word in your question was, how do we? Now, is that an honest we, or is that I in disguise? How do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
If you're honest in asking the question, how do we do this, then you're more likely on your way to creating the sustainability and the legacy you seek.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the leader. In fact, I believe leadership, certainly in the Richard Rohr sense also, would more likely be defined as followership. And it is whom you follow that defines your leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And legacy and sustainability are perhaps largely about my not being here someday. And maybe I, as a leader, should consider diminishing my role and expanding theirs
Mm-hmm.
in order to provide for that future event of my absence.
You hit on something in that last part you talked about. It's not about me. Autocratic leadership, charismatic leadership, it's about me. Transformational leadership is a system, and it's about the vision and really elevating leaders within that culture. I define that with clients I work with, whether it's a business or a charity or a church, as creating a new architecture of culture, a new architecture of how we function together, a new architecture of how we approach this sustainability, and that is impacted by the leader, or it's squelched by the leader. I just finished doing a one-day leadership empowerment symposium in 19 cities. I've got 10 more on the books coming up. Nashville's not on my radar yet, but I hope it will be at some point. I find at the beginning of each of these, it's designed to give people systems. And to me, leadership is a system, a culture, as well as a skill to lead that culture. I've asked people at the beginning of every one of those, what are the issues you want to make sure we deal with today? Number one across all of them is leader burnout. Number two is board and volunteer underfunctioning. And number three, lack of sufficient recurring revenue to accomplish their vision and mission. Now, speak to those. I believe those are all subsets of leadership, of the leader. We set those up as a leader, don't we?
I believe we do. That is a lot to unpack, Hugh. Hugh, you devil, that's a lot. Leader burnout. Well, when we were talking about the leader acknowledges that it's not about me. He has to explore what he or she means by that. Mm-hmm. So, in order to minimize me, we have to understand what I am. I have to understand what I am and who I am. Ah. But if I'm a leader, I largely have to define whose I am. Mm. And I am more empowered to get on with it's not being about me. And the less it is about me, I think, the less likely there is to be burnout.
Love it.
Now, I don't want it to be about me. I've always wanted my values to unite the thinking and effort of all of us, because I want them to be shared values. And the leader should largely talk about values and what's important to all of us that we can get excited together about. Mm. That's a good antidote for burnout. If we all are propelled by the same motor, then that motor doesn't burn out as much as it might. Mm-hmm. And we can help each other to take care of it too. And so what we aspired to do was to say, first of all, we're going to do our strategic planning. We're going to try to define mission and vision. Well, we can't do that, can we, if we don't talk about the values that are important to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And what are those values? Let's state them as a group so that we can understand them together and use them as issues come up in our work to help us to take care of the culture of this organization, because these are what will do that, these values. So we finally resolved on a 2-word mission statement, which was beautiful in that everybody could remember it.
Love it. Love it.
2-word mission statement: serving others.
Whoa.
Now, that differentiates you from the largest constituency of all that seeks to serve self, seeks to serve that company, seeks to serve that government entity, seeks to serve whatever. But it's about others. And what is our greatest contribution to them? Now, it didn't say service, which implies you do it and then go on to something else. It's an ongoing verb.
Mm-hmm.
It should motivate us every day of our life to figure out that day's agenda of serving others. And those were the 2 words that really got our company going. And you can spot the person who is amenable, governable by serving others.
Mm-hmm.
When someone is in it for self, it doesn't take you too long to know that you don't have strategic commonality with that person. And you need strategic commonality of your leader and his or her persons. You don't have people as a leader. You have persons, and everybody's unique. Everybody's one of a kind.
Love it.
And you can be enriched by diversity, and sometimes you feel damned by it. But you need it. You need it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we as
now,
leaders
happened to the sound. Did it to you also?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, you're not on the speaker here, but that's all right. I can hear you well enough.
All right. That's pretty profound. One of the things I have noticed ever since I've known you is that you're a very active listener, both with your ears and with your eyes. And that, to me, is a primary leadership skill. And you listen, and then you think, and then you respond. So I can imagine the situation with you talking to your managers, and you listening and acting and based on their response, and you observing. So that's really a skill set that more leaders ought to employ, the active listening, both orally and visually. What do you think?
That is the crux of the leadership dynamic, whether you can listen to others, whether you can listen to yourself. Listening is so much more than just waiting your turn to speak. What are you doing in the time before speaking? What are you doing? Are you thinking about what you're going to say, or are you trying hard to take in what the other person said and what he or she might mean by that? And could both of you perhaps pursue that question that's in the background of words used by the other person? What is the question? What is that question? I'm fascinated by questions, and especially when they lead to answers by others who would implement the answer.
Wow.
That's what you're trying to do as a leader.
Uh-huh.
And you're trying to listen your persons or your people into better questions.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
So you don't, in fact, you excuse my vernacular, but I've said I certainly do not consider myself a repository of answers, but a suppository of questions. Questions that get the flow going, questions that challenge. I'm challenged by the questions of life, and any leader should help others to explore that challenge. What is in the life of this organization? What is our organization about? What are our real opportunities? What would you feel good about our doing for the customer together? What is the greatest need of the customer, the meeting of which would ring our chime? What is that? Whatever enterprise we're in, we're a unique organization, so we don't have to model ourselves after the competition.
Oh.
What if we aspired to define the customer pool on our unique creativity? What would we feel most fulfilled about if we could meet that need of the customer? Now, the more you help each other to experience fulfillment, the less you're burned out. But it comes from others.
Yeah.
There may be burnout where someone like me might be trying to do too much myself. But relax, Cal, you're not God. And you're not even God of this organization, even if you are the boss's son.
Yeah. The principle you're describing to me is collaborative culture. And I find that a whole lot of leaders, especially clergy, don't know how to do that. There's a control piece and there's an insecurity piece. And the dynamic that you described, which I love, is I'm not the answer man. I'm the question person. And that way you're teaching people to think. And if you answer all the questions, that's over functioning. And as Murray Bowen, we talked about Murray Bowen's work, that he describes the antithesis of that is under functioning, the reciprocity. If you answer all the questions, then you're teaching people they got to come to you for the answers. So you're putting yourself in that bottleneck. So we've created that burnout. We've also created, by our lack of effective leadership, we've created dependency and under-functioning staff, board, volunteers in the culture. So we actually set up the problems by not doing the kinds of things that you're inviting people to think about doing. Am I tracking with you?
You are indeed.
Are there some other ways that leaders get in the way? I tell leaders, do their vision, mission, write their objectives and their tasks, and then empower people and get out of their way.
Yes. Yeah.
It's hard for people to do, though.
That's profound, and indeed, it isn't. It isn't that easy to do. I think you can get out of the way of other people if you try to get over yourself a little bit.
Oh, that's big. I love it.
Get over yourself.
Get over yourself.
get excited about helping your people. And if you have the reputation of wanting to help them, then they might ask how they need to be helped. And they might ask deeper questions of what's needed here. If they know you seek to serve the customer, and as leader you want to serve them as the way of eventually serving the customer, then you're throwing the ball back into their court. And I had already said I respect how you will play the ball. What you do, I'm amazed at, because I've tried to do it and I'm not good at it. You are. I respect that.
Love it.
Now, what are your issues? And how can we explore the next best answer step to take? Sometimes we try to figure out the whole problem when, if we have the right leadership culture, we could figure out the next best step en route to the achievement of our vision. What's the next thing? What's the next thing to do? We don't have to get all the way to the answer today, but what gets us working toward an answer together? And could we perhaps share milestones together so that we can all see how we can help each other to move along better together? We used to call our planning on the run, because we'd do our planning and we'd all understand where we were starting, and we'd all have a sense of the eventual end of the eventual success we see. So we'd understand where we're starting and where we all hope eventually to end, and we're going to come together to take steps together that'll move us along the pathway better. And we're going to have to learn as we go. You can't figure everything out now. Stuff is going to happen. And you need to be honest with each other about what the stuff is so you can help each other. And Hugh, you've heard me talk about the change in mindset of my father's generation in the business and mine, as to guilt and blame when something would go wrong. My father would say, "Who did that?" And I would say, "I'm not going to tell you." And he'd say, "Do you know?" I'd say, "Yes." "Well, tell me." I'm not going to tell you. We're not going to ask that question anymore.
Ah,
Our question isn't about who. Our question will be about what? What happened? And who needs to come together
mm-hmm.
to fix it? And that is a major shift. And Richard Rohr's concept of non-dualistic thinking, I think, largely moves the blame. It at least helps everyone to come together more creatively to respond to problems, issues, and gaps than asking the question who would ever do. When you say who did it, you're going to draw a line in the sand between you and the other person.
Yeah, yeah. It's a shift. It's a shift.
When you look at the world through that filter,
Mm-hmm.
you're amazed at the who. We define human potential by its packaging. Oh, you are conservative or liberal. You're a fat cat, a rich fat cat, or you're a poor struggling somebody or other. Well, everyone is the child of God who wants to be part of something that matters, and the leader helps that to happen.
That's a great statement. That's a great statement. As we're sort of approaching the landing strip here, I want to focus for a minute and get your thoughts on how leadership impacts the revenue. I encourage, when I work with 501c3 organizations, I encourage them to think of the word nonprofit as a tax classification, not a philosophy of operations. And
That's good.
revenue, and I work with a lot of startup or early stage entrepreneurs or charities, and they think money is going to fix everything. And I say money is a magnifier. If you don't have systems, it's going to magnify what's wrong and create the negative effect. So focusing on money is not the answer. However, as you and I have talked about over the years, it's a result of really good systems and serving your customer. There's a resultant that brings in a blessing of revenue, so you can do more of it. So leaders are in the way. We block this thing of happening that feeds us. It's like we build a car, but we haven't put gas in it, so we can't go anywhere. So speak about the leader role in enabling or blocking that to happen.
Well, blocking what happening, Hugh? Blocking
revenue. Yeah, revenue.
Well,
or enabling it. Either way, either side. Either side.
Money is never the problem where a strategic need is being met by persons who buy into the same vision. The money doesn't lead, it follows. It doesn't answer. It results from persons coming together to work on the answer. And it's more of a scorecard than it is a success attainment. It'll happen. It'll happen if you and your people are united and you're really doing something that makes a difference. together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how do you generalize about money? Well, that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard to do, but I guess that's my best shot.
It's well, and you've made a dollar or two. You've been successful, and you've employed the leadership principles. I experienced leaders, and I'm not exempt from any of this. In getting in the way, they get in the way of the people leading. They get in the way of the mission and vision. They get in the way of creating sustainable revenue. And there's lots of reasons that people get in the way. So what you gave me there, what you gave our listeners, is very astute. As we're leaving this interview,
Let me interrupt you.
Yes.
One comment on that. I've heard people say, "Where there's no money, there's no mission."
Mm-hmm.
Well, perhaps where there's no mission, there's no money.
Uh-huh.
So you're talking about what isn't there. The money's not there. But the money is absent because the mission is absent. That creates the absence of the money. A mission is something that inspires others to achieve. It meets a real need that tugs at your heart, and your pocketbook will follow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That statement is reported in not as direct a way in the writing of Napoleon Hill, who interviewed all of these capitalists in his era, the Carnegies.
Think, Grow Rich?
Yeah, Carnegies and Rockefellers and Edison, Emerson, Ford, Wanamaker, presidents. They had definiteness of purpose. That's your mission. They had a group around them. They brought something good to the world. Now, looking back, some of them were kind of heavy-handed with that, but they also surrounded themselves with like-minded people who wanted to change things. So that's consistent. And really, he says he lists attributes of wealth, and money's the last one. And he made a point of saying that's the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's.
And I might alter the words a little bit from like-minded people to like-missioned.
Yeah. Very good. I welcome that addition. So as we're departing, and I meet lots and lots. I had conversations with 100 entrepreneurs last week. I was at a business growth conference called CEO Space, and I had interviews with 100 people, and there was not a bad vision, not a bad idea of what the mission ought to be. They didn't have it as clear, but they had passion for something that would change people's lives. They didn't have a structure underneath it. And I think the law of averages, Jim Rohn used to teach this, that 3% of the people will actually do something about it. So for those people out there that have the germ of an idea, they've got a vision for something, they haven't put together the pieces you've talked about to empower it, what advice would you have for people that have a passion for making a difference in people's lives? And what would you say to them as a leader? What would be your advice to them?
Well, I hope it's not your passion for them. I hope it's their passion for themselves that you help them achieve. I may have a higher mission and purpose in mind for you, Hugh Ballou, than you have.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not on board yet for your accomplishing anything. What is your highest purpose that I can help you to achieve?
Really good. You don't need a lot of words to make impact. I love that. I love that. Cal Turner, I interviewed you years ago for a book, and you got so excited you decided you'd write your own book. You wrote it with Howard Oles. What was the name of that book?
Led to follow.
Live to Follow. And
Led, L-E-D, led to follow.
okay, and they can find
A
that
leader is one who is led to follow.
It's a brilliant book. You sent me a copy when it was published, and I believe people can find it on Amazon.
I think so.
Cal Turner, Howard Oles. That's a wonderful book. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, and I'm grateful for our friendship and all that I've learned over the years. And so thank you so much for today's interview.
Thank you, Hugh. I enjoy our chewing on the questions together.
Me too. Thank you so much.